In section A, we have the intro in 4 bars. A few things to mention about that. The slide shown here on the 5th string into the 3rd fret. This occurs at the beginning of every measure in the intro. Another thing to mention is that bar number 4 should basically be a duplicate of the other 3 that came before it. It's changed a little bit here, but at this point it should be the same as the others. This is not the complete intro. There's actually 3 measures worth of music that's missing from the front of this, and 1 more bar that should have been included at the end of this. And here's the missing part of the fade in, 3 bars that weren't included in the score, and it sounds something like this. From there we resume by going into the printed score, which starts where we left off, and these 4 bars adjusted should sound something like this. And this is the last measure of the intro that should have been included after bar 4 in the printed score, and it would sound something like this. If we were to play through the whole introduction with all 8 bars and all the adjustments made, it should sound something like this. Then section B starts with this G over B figure, and measure 5 is almost correct except for the end of beat 3 into 4 where it's not quite right. Here's the revised version of bar 5, and this also applies to bar 17. It should sound something like this. And in measure 6 we have this C5 figure that just sounds like this. Measure 7 only contains 1 error, and that's this open 2nd string at the end of beat 3. It actually should be an open 4th string. Here's the revised version of measure 7, which also applies to measures 11 and 19, and it should sound something like this. And in measure 8 we have this C5 figure again. So if we were to play through this whole line from measures 5 through 8, it should sound something like this. Bars 9 through 12 are basically a repeat of the line we just went through, with the exception of measure 9. Here's the revised version of bar 9, similar to the first time he played this G over B figure, but just slightly different at the end. The rest of this line is basically the same as the last one. You've got the familiar C5 figure in measures 10 and in 12. There's also the same error in measure 11 as there was in 7, with the open 2nd string instead of the open 4th string. So if we were going to play through bars 9 through 12 with the adjustments we made here, it should sound something like this. So we can move up to the next line. In bar 13 at the top left, we have a new sequence based on F add 9, and it sounds something like this. In bar 14, we return to a C5 figure, but it's a little different than the last one we looked at, so we'll take a closer look. This is a revised version of bar 14, which also applies to bar 16, and it's the only thing that sets it apart from the other C5 figure we looked at is this open A string, which is given an eighth note value, but it isn't allowed to ring out any longer than that because that's how Jimmy plays it, and it sounds something like this. Bars 15 and 16 are basically a repeat of bars 13 and 14, so if we were to play through this line from bars 13 to 16 with the slight adjustments we made, it would sound something like this. Looking at bars 17 through 20, what we have is a duplicate of what we had in bars 5 through 8 with the same adjustments that we had there. So we can take a look at the next line. At the bottom of the page, we have section C for the next 16 bars, starting at measure 21, and I'm going to walk through this a little bit. Once we've gone past all the directional symbols, we arrive at section D. And in this section, 16 bars of it are nearly identical to the last section we just went through. There are some small differences there, but it's mostly identical. I'm going to go through this first line and stop at measure 40, just because there's some details in there I want to take a closer look at. We can see that at the end of measure 40 there's a harmonic indicated here, but there's really no note specified for it, and also the two notes at the end in the staff don't appear to correspond with the two notes in the tab, if I'm reading that correctly. Here's a revised version of bar 40, and you can see on the top line the slide that's coming through from the last measure, but we can just disregard that from the time being and start with the open A and work from there. So there is a harmonic on beat 4, but it's more than likely unintentional. The third string was lightly touched at the 4th fret, producing this harmonic. So it's just a small detail that was captured on the master take. I'm going to go through the next 11 bars, starting with measure 41. Page, the measures are not numbered, but I just completed measure 51, just about to get into measure 52 here, and we see at measure 52 we have this A sus2 sequence, and this is supposed to be played 3 times in succession in 3 measures. So we have one measure here, there's another measure here, and there's supposed to be another measure here, but it looks like we got a reprint of this measure instead from the last sequence. So this is some kind of a sequencing error. I'm going to continue from where I left off just so that we can finally complete this little review. has a little note at the bottom of the score that says doubled by second acoustic recorded backwards. Unfortunately, I've never heard this myself.